What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the quarantine zone again, and this time we are here with Jeremy of the Devil Wears Prada. Great to be able to talk to you today, man. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me. The quarantine zone. I like that.
Yep, the quarantine special. I'm so sick and tired of saying that, though. I cannot wait for shows to return.
Seems like you're about done with that, I would think, at this point.
Yeah, I mean, normally it's like, hey, it's Alex from Heavy New York. We are back at this venue, but, outside of,
Mm.
New York City's one big quarantine zone, there's no, that's the only venue.
Uh,
But it's so great to have you here. Congrats on the release of this new EP, The Zombie 2. The Zombie series for me is very sentimental to me because that's when you released the first Zombie EP, that's when I actually first saw The Devil Wears Prada on the Phil Switch Engage Dark Tranquility tour. But one thing I was curious about is what was the intention to always make a series out of this EP? Was there always an idea to make like a sequel to the first Zombie EP, or was this just sort of like a spur of the moment idea in a way?
I definitely don't think we ever set to make a sequel from the onset, like with the old one, I guess 11 years ago. That was kind of just like, let's just see how this goes. I even remember thinking at the time, these songs are awesome, but we were coming off an album with Roots Above and Branches Below that was insanely more melodic, and we were much more into the MySpace scene of stuff. So I remember thinking this might kind of isolate the fan base a little bit. Little did we know how that was gonna go. But I think when we did Space, that definitely kind of set the wheels in motion, that a possibility of going back to that place would be cool. And then right before we did our last album, The Act, those guys kind of started putting some ideas together. Kyle, our other guitar player, and John, our keyboard player, like kind of the main songwriters at this point, and they had started demoing some stuff, and it just wasn't really hitting where it needed to be for a zombie thing. So we kind of scrapped that and started from square one and ended up with The Act. But we knew that we would do it then. At that point, it just seemed kind of like it made sense. And then the stuff they were doing, like once we came off of tour, was just so crazy. We were like, all right, let's go.
Well, do you feel that like maybe for a listener to fully understand this zombie EP, they should go back and listen to the first EP just to sort of know where you're coming from in a way, or is that like not that important?
I don't maybe, like, if they don't know the band at all, this is probably a great place to jump in. I think, like, for us, this was kind of a statement piece of saying, we kind of just got sick of people pigeonholing us and saying, oh, they're just a bunch of like art house dudes now, and they're over here in left field doing whatever, and they've abandoned where they came from. And this was kind of a way to be like, that's not true at all. Like, if we want to write heavy records, we'll write them, sort of thing. And so I think it's definitely a good jumping in point. I mean, I really like the last EP, and we just did like a live stream of it in November, I think it was. So like, it's definitely not something we're ashamed of, or like, don't go listen to that. So,
Yeah.
but I think both kind of sit in their own space.
I know you guys have been very open about not liking your earlier material, which really hurts me because Rosemary Had an Accident might be one of my favorite songs in your catalog. And, pretty much entering high school, I mean, with Roots Above and Branches Below was what I was jamming in my freshman year of high school. But I've always
Mm.
admired your ability to, like, expand. I mean, could you believe that this year is also 10 years of Dead Throne? Like, and that was,
I can't.
yeah,
and
so.
and next year's like 15 years of plagues, dude. That's something I'm trying to move away from, personally. Is I started to think about like corn issues and some of the Limp Bizkit albums and stuff I grew up on, and I'd be like, that would really bum me out if those guys were on air going, that album sucks. So I actually have been going back into like plagues, and Dear Love's, the memories are fun. I'm not hating on it; it's chill. But like Plagues and With Roots Above, especially, just digging into and being like, actually, there's some really cool stuff in here, and maybe trying to bring some of that stuff back in. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Well, I thought that the act was your latest full length album was actually like I really admired like the changes in it because like I think it had everything we liked about Devil Wears Prada, but like obviously Mike was doing the God Alone project, so I thought that maybe there was some
Hmm.
experimental elements in there, but like I thought that there was like a great post hardcore element. Like I saw elements of like Glassjaw or Every Time I Die or even Poison the Well incorporated in there. So I think it's fair to say that you guys always take inspirations from multiple sources, right?
Yeah, totally. Actually, as I was kind of digging into like specifically Dear Love and Plagues, there's some stuff like there's a song Who Speaks Spanish that has some super post rock rip off stuff that Chris and I were trying to do. And then, you can't spell crap without seeing some of those things. You can really hear where we were listening to like Interpol and Explosions and different stuff and trying to just bring that in. And so I think to me, it was kind of a wake up call of saying like everyone needs to quit dogging on this weird stuff that we try and do now because we've always been weird. It's not like we just like played breakdown after breakdown. I love Whitechapel, but we were not writing the same albums as them. And I think like that was kind of a realization of saying we've always done this weird stuff. Maybe we just didn't do a good job of broadcasting that lately. So I think like the act was kind of a turning point for that of saying, we'll just do whatever.
Well, and kind of going back to the Zombie 2 EP, like, do you almost consider these EPs, because you also have the Space EP, do you almost, like, think of them as maybe, like, a fundamentally secular aspect of your catalog? Because, as a fan of Devil Wears Prada, like, I would be able to tell what would be off of Dear Love, or what would be off of Plagues, or Roots, or Dead Throne, 818, etc. So, like, do you consider maybe the EPs to almost kind of be like a I'm gonna use a video game reference.
Uh-huh.
The side quest in the Devil Wears Prada journey.
I don't even think of them as side quests so much as I kind of think we've we've just had so many different things happen since we were six kids from Dayton, working out of a garage to the way we do things now and the people that we do them with and the situations we've been through and like writing songs after having been on 100 Warp Tours and after having been out with Killswitch and after having like been yelled at a Slayer show. I just or this guy's not in the band anymore, this guy's actually better at writing songs today than he was last week. I just think almost all of them are their own little vacuums of just the best you could create at that moment. And so oh, not I don't hate to be too meta with that and like, but that's just kind of the way I think of it. Instead of the EP being a side quest, that's more just us saying like, okay, what do we want to do right now? We want to write a zombie EP. Let's write the best zombie EP possible. And so I don't necessarily think it's a side quest because I think that's some of the best stuff those guys could write like right now. So that being said, I mean they have a bunch of other stuff already cooking. So
Do you ever like enter the studio with a preconceived idea, like let's make it sound like this, or is there like a lot of experimentation and trial and error and kind of like a lot of improv involved?
it's kind of both. Like records themselves are kind of just collections of songs as well, and you never really set out writing a song even though it's meant to be on a record, they're their own fresh like notepads, right, for each one. And so I think like both sonically and lyrically and everything, even though there's some cohesion, like each is its own separate idea. And I think what you try and do in the studio process and definitely in the mixing process is kind of make all those things make sense together. And so like it's different for us because our keyboard player John produced our last album and he produced the EP, so he definitely has more of an aggressive hand on like this is how I want these things to go together. But by the time you hand him off to the mixer, which in this case is Alex Prieto, he just absolutely turn them into totally different beasts, right? He hears a layer and he's like, oh no, that's the focus. Crank that up. Where we may not have, we put it in there, but we don't think that's the highlight part of the track. So all credit to him for how amazing the songs sound.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, I always like I'm always every album, every Devil Wears Prada album always leaves me asking what are they gonna do next, because so it's always exciting to see what a Devil Wears Prada album is able to do. And one thing
Thank you.
I've wanted to ask you, I asked Mike this back on the tour that you did in 2019, but like being to me one of the first sounds I think of when I hear Devil Wears Prada is really the collaborative efforts between your vocals and Mike's vocals with your clean singing and everything like that. And
Hmm.
even though you have a clean vocal style and Mike is all out aggressive, I feel like there is, a lot of just a good example would be Ben Has a Kid. I just think that that's like the
Mm.
perfect transition. But when it comes to like either writing the lyrics or tracking the vocals, do you and Mike almost need to be in kind of like the same state of mind to kind of make the vocals sound somewhat consistent or like they belong on the same track?
I don't know necessarily state of mind. Like I usually want to know what he's saying with the song, or a part to really deliver it with conviction. Like, and I don't even necessarily have to believe that same thing myself. It's almost like acting, right? Because I really don't write a lot of lyrics. I think I've written maybe like three lyrics ever in the history of the band. So usually for me it's trying to understand what that part is trying to say and then actually believe it myself and then project that into the microphone. So I guess through that there's a little bit of like synchronous together, but I think it's definitely more mechanical. We're trying to line up our time so that it sounds natural that we're singing at the same time or one flows into each other. But each part's totally different too. Sometimes I might track it first and he'll track it to me, or he might track it first, I'll track it to him. We're never doing stuff like at the same time together. It's always like punching over top of each other. So
Yeah, fair enough. There was one question I wanted to ask you, and it might be kind of personal, so if you choose to skip this, I'll
that's
totally
cool.
understand.
I have no shame.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I know that your faith and like, Devil Wears Prada has been labeled as the sort of Christian thing, and I know you've been asked this 1,000 times by now.
yeah.
But I I was always curious that, because there's a lot of bands that have been labeled that sound nothing like each other. Like you guys don't sound exactly like Norma Jean. You guys don't exactly sound
Yeah.
like Skillet. Do you think that that is really just in a lyrical standpoint or like a concept that's driven, or does it influence the sound in which you incorporate as well?
I like me for me personally, I'm not a Christian at this point in my life, and I don't think I have been for probably a really long time. But I've taken a lot of moral lessons from that portion of my upbringing. That's kind of just the way I was raised. Probably like a lot of, I'm not unique in that. In our generation, there's a lot of people that kind of grew up that way
And
that
in
have
this genre too.
fallen away from. Yeah. But I think early on that was like probably the biggest thing that my was driving home lyrically. But I think he maybe even since the Zombie EP or 818 different portions, he's moved into a lot of different avenues where that's just not what he writes about either. So I don't think we would consider ourselves to be a Christian band. I think we would just be a band, and sometimes that's something that we've sung about and sometimes it's not. So
Okay. Yeah, because again, like people, it's a lot of the things that people get labeled as now. Like, I never know, is that just based on lyrics or if that's just based on the sound?
yeah, yeah.
Like,
It's definitely not praise and worship music for sure. So
yeah.
I think it was just different too. Like, that was 2005. So just I remember like my mom didn't want me to get CDs that weren't from the Christian music store. My dad couldn't have cared less at all.
Hmm.
He's like parental advisor, I'll buy you whatever. So I think it mattered more for people in that kind of space than it does now, at least from my experience.
I'll get you a Mayhem album for Christmas.
Thank you, please. I like them.
But, um, and what's funny too is like I've a lot of people label you as metalcore as well, and
Yeah.
like that genre has also kind of like broadened way too much because people say metalcore is like the combination of singing and screaming. I'm like, okay, so would you dare call Opeth a metalcore band?
Yeah, I would not like same with Metallica. Like you wouldn't call Metallica that. I would say we are probably the worst offenders of changing the metalcore narrative unintentionally. I don't think we ever like meant to like redefine what the genre meant. Like for us, it was more like Kill Switch and As I Lay Dying and all that kind of stuff. But I know because we started claiming it, then there was a whole generation of people that were called metalcore that were like us. But I don't know, I still call it that just because I'm like, I don't really care. You could, if you say it's heavy metal, people are like, oh no you're not.
Hmm.
So that probably pisses off people more than anything.
Well, you played the main stage at Mayhem Fest with Slayer, so you guys are freaking metal
That's
as
true.
hell. So
We'll hold the metal title.
yeah, and it's funny too because like that version of metalcore, like when I was in high school, that was like the big thing. It was like you guys, Escape the Fate, Asking
Oh yeah.
Alexandria, Bring Me the Horizon, Bullet for My Valentine was like god to people in high
Yeah, I
school.
love that band.
So
Yeah.
like it seemed like there was a transition from the Kill Switch Engages to the All That Remains and Shadows Fall to that metalcore
Yes.
seemed to nowadays Dance Gavin Dance is considered metalcore. So
That's crazy. Yeah. Because I would never say that. I love those guys too, but yeah, I would never say that.
yeah, and you mentioned that you're kind of working on some new music now, if you're allowed to say, without giving too
Sure,
much
yeah.
away. But like, do you think that the act being as experimental as it was maybe opened up new doors for the future of the next Devil Wears Prada full length album? Was that maybe a good representation of the direction you guys will go in from here on out?
In some ways, I think so. I think probably the combination of the two are a better representation of what's next. Like I think we kind of went in 100 different directions on the act and just saw what stuck. It was almost kind of I'm so sick of um, not doing whatever we want, and so let's just do it. And so I think what we ended up with was a lot of things we really like, and maybe some things that I love the album, but there's a few things we probably won't do again. So like where there's a track like Chemical, that's definitely a direction we'll continue to go in. And I think like where the thread was cool, I mean Z2 just kind of cranks that up to like 15, and so I think we'll definitely keep going down that aggressive path. But I think like for me the goal would be to really highlight Mike, to really highlight myself, and to really highlight songwriting when it comes to the next full length. And that, like, as long as those things get accomplished, then I think we've won kind of. Plus I guess we'll never get rid of the breakdowns, they're too fun. Z2 is just a great example of that.
Yeah, I remember I was talking to like one of the biggest like metal snobs you'll ever hear in your life. Like, what's with all these breakdowns? Why do they need? I'm like, because they're fucking fun, dude. Like,
Oh yeah, dude. When you get to the show and the whole crowd is just going psycho, it's like, wow, okay, that's why we started doing this. I remember.
and I'll just tell you this. I mean, I've been in deathcore pits. I've been in Slayer pits. I've been in all this. When you went into Danger Wild Man at that Roots Above anniversary show, that was by far the most violent pit I've ever seen in my life.
Was that at Gramercy or
Yep.
where was that?
Yep,
Oh
Gramercy
yeah, I
Theater.
love that place, man. I
Yeah.
love it so much.
I live 4 blocks away from there, so it's very
Oh,
convenient.
sick.
It's
Oh,
very
good for you, man.
yeah.
That's awesome.
I could always tell you it makes a tour manager's life a lot easier when they say, "Oh, how soon can you get here? Could you do the interview early?" I was like, "I'll be there in 5 minutes."
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. And when it comes to playing live, though, because I've seen Devil Wears Prada now live countless times, and I always enjoy seeing you live more. Like I love listening to the albums, but live is where I get the full Devil Wears Prada experience. Do you
Mhm.
put a similar energy though into your live presence as you do when you're songwriting or practicing, or do you consider playing live and songwriting completely two separate arts altogether?
It kind of depends on the situation. I think like for something like Z2, there's definitely a lot more emphasis on yeah, guitar over here, a guitar over here, and maybe a lead up the middle. And so that kind of just translates itself a lot cleaner to a live experience where some tracks, if there's like 100 layers or something, it might not come across the same way. But I think for whatever reason, just the way we write songs, we always want them to be experienced live at some point. They're never supposed to just live in a vacuum. So like, I don't know, Chemical, again, great example. I really love the way the song sounds on the album, but it's totally different in a live environment, and I don't like one over the other necessarily. And I think like, I mean, we did kind of play these live, I guess, on the live stream. So like we did play them live, even though there was no audience in front of us, and they ripped already. So I'm just like salivating to go play them in front of a crowd. So
Yeah.
I think the energy becomes different. The song itself becomes a different thing when you bring it into a live environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And on top of that, every album, like, I feel like every album, and I'm not in the band, so I can't speak on this regard, but like, but it almost seems like every album is like a self portrait. You mentioned, like, with Dear Love, I mean, you were a bunch of kids in the garage in Dayton, Ohio. I mean, I feel that
Hmm.
underground, I call it the debut charm. Like, it has that underground. It,
Yeah.
it has that underground charm to it. Like Plagues, I thought was a great representation on the direction that not just your band was going into, but where music was going into. I love how
Mm.
with Roots Above was a dedication to your crew. Little inside.
Yeah, that was sweet.
Yeah, how many kids does Ben have now? I heard he had another one. You gotta.
He does. Yeah, he only has two, but he has more than one. So
Is it true what Mike said that there was originally he wanted you to write a song called Ben Has Still Got It?
yeah, that sounds like something that he would want to do. Oh, that's
Yeah.
so good.
But it's fair to say that every album is like a self portrait in a way and a representation of who
Hmm.
you are, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's who those people are that made it. It's who that mixer was at the moment that they mixed it. Like I think that's a big part of it. Obviously, Joey Sturgis was a huge part of our sound growing up, and he was a lot like us, just came from a small town, pretty scrappy, made the best of every opportunity. A lot of people had parents that just like bought them a whole live rig. And for most of us, we were scrapping together like whatever we could find. And so Joey was kind of the same way, and he made records that way. And so I think, I don't know if it's just like this hillbilly Midwest type of energy that comes out of that, but I think that's what made it so relatable. And so I think, yeah, going from that into a huge studio on like Dead Throne, and then even bringing it back to where it was kind of half and half on the Z2 stuff. Yeah, I think they're all just little portraits of that moment.
Yeah. And the final question I wanted to ask you is being that, Devil Wears Prada did cut their teeth in Dayton, Ohio. I mean, Ohio has such a great scene, I've noticed, with the history of like, Nine Inch Nails, obviously, but like it
Yeah,
almost
yeah,
seems like with Chimera starting there, as well as, like Moths to Flames, I think is the latest edition to sort of rise
yeah.
out of that state. Was there kind of like a scene that you were very active in, or was the goal to just get the hell out of your hometown and play anywhere else but there?
kind of kind of both, honestly. Like I think almost all of us in the band had played in other bands before. Actually, I know that was a fact. All of us had been in other projects before we were in the Devil Wears Prada, like in the local Dayton scene. So like before we all kind of came together from wherever we came from, we had been playing house shows and like playing at bars in town and doing everything. And then even, I mean, there was a point in time where two of my guys, two of the Miss May I guys, um, our buddy Tyler, who now writes with like Lights and a bunch of crazy people who lives down in California. Like all these people lived in the same house by the University of Dayton, and I lived down the street, like with our bass player and some other people. And like Caleb from Beartooth, he grew up like an hour away in Columbus. So there was just this weird little community. I think it's because we had really nothing else going on. So it's not like New York, it's like you could walk down the street and find something to do. It's like there's nothing to do. So let's just have shows.
Yeah, that's a good. I think that's why there's so many bands that come from Sweden because like people ask, what is it about there? I'm like, okay, it's cold 9 times out of the year, it's dark 24/7, and people live up in the mountains up there. Like, what else
Yeah,
is
they
there to
have
do? It's
evil ideas.
yeah, it gets pretty crazy. But yeah, I've always admired. Like, I went to Ohio twice in 2019 to cover festivals, and I mean, I just met a lot of people who
Oh,
were.
where'd you go to?
I went to Sonic Temple. Great,
Okay.
great festival. I guess it used to be Rock on the Range.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's in Columbus
Yep.
area. Yeah.
And then I went to Incarceration in Mansfield.
Oh,
Um,
sick.
yeah,
Yeah, we're actually playing that this fall. So that's going to be crazy.
yeah. That's. Have you ever been to it?
No, I've been near that area, but I've never actually been there. Isn't that where like Shawshank was
Y-
kind of based out of
It's
and
in that
everything?
prison. It's in that prison.
That's so sick.
Yeah, like, but it is. that is a festival to see. Let me just tell you, you're gonna have a blast on
Yeah.
that show. Um,
Yeah, we're gonna go the whole weekend, man. Just hang out because we got a bunch of buddies that are coming on and stuff too. So it'll be sick.
yeah, but as I was like I met a lot of people just from Ohio, and like they're just all dedicated metalheads there. Like I was really impressed. Like in New York City, the biggest city in the world, I kind of had to search high and low to find our great thriving underground scene. I had to look for it for a while, but like in Ohio, it just seems like it's everywhere.
Oh yeah, dude. We're hillbillies. That's all we know how to do is mosh.
Fair enough. You ain't gonna find many hillbillies in New York City. You'll find
Yeah,
hipsters,
that's
and
true. You run them out.
you'll you'll find hipsters, and I don't like what they listen to. But before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Is there just anything else that you would like to promote for the Devil Wears Prada? You mentioned incarceration. Is there any other shows you'd like to plug? And maybe again, if you're allowed to say a time frame when we could be expecting a new full length.
Yeah, it's probably too early for that. We'll put something out for sure before the end of the year. We're kind of all focused on Z2 right now. So incarceration is the only thing officially announced. If you do want to see the band this fall, you will be able to. I'm not allowed to say anymore. They'll get mad at me, but we will be going around playing shows in the fall. And then just thanks. I just wanted to thank everybody for all the support. Like on Z2, it's such a psychotic moment right now. It's totally crazy. People are just like going nuts. So it's awesome.
To be honest with you, like I've like all of my fellow scene kid friends who I went to high school with, we literally messaged each other for the first time since we graduated almost 10 years ago about this EP. Like that,
Dude,
yeah.
so crazy. I was texting one of my buddies from Of Mice and Men. He was like, dude, it's like there's a renaissance happening right now. And it really feels like that. Like architects putting out stuff, like everybody's coming back, it seems like.
My Chemical Romance reuniting is making every
Jeez.
person my age and older emo again. It is
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
I've never
Emo's back, man. It's back.
that after they announced their show, I've never seen more eyeliner in my life. It's incredible. I love it. So, but thank you so much, everybody. The Devil Wears Prada. Be sure to check out the Zombie 2 EP. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.